I am Therese McMillan, co-chair, along with Asha Weinstein Agrawal, of the 6th International Conference on Women's Issues in Transportation. The conference is organized by the U.S. Transportation Research Board and sponsored by the Standing Committee on Women's Issues in Transportation, ABE 70. The conference provides an update on the progress and challenges in relation to women and mobility, explores how gender equality practices in transportation are increasing business and economics development, exchanges ideas on how public agencies can incorporate good gender equality policies and practices with approaches to oversee efforts and measure performance, and examines methods to address safety and security of women who are employed with or using transportation systems. As the national and global trends demonstrate, more women than ever are using the transportation system across their life stages to fully realize their potential and contribute to their family, community, and society needs. Unfortunately, the travel patterns of women must account for real and perceived personal security and safety threats. In conjunction with the conference, interviews were obtained from leaders at local, national, regional, and international governments and organizations to share their efforts to combat harassment and violence towards women across all modes of transportation. Now, let's hear from leaders who are gathering data, developing awareness campaigns, influencing policy, and implementing planning and design interventions to ensure women can travel more securely and safely.
My name is Lina Eriksson and I'm the Director General for Swedish Transport Administration, Trafikverket.
My name is Maria Kraft and I'm Director of Traffic Safety at the Swedish Transport Administration. So in order to protect life, security and well-being, our authority has a goal that we will reduce the number of fatalities until 2030 compared to 2020. And I would say that many of the actions addresses women.
To ensure a safe environment at the train station and bus stops, we actively work with camera surveillance, security guards and station hosts. We also strive for clean environments at the station and areas around, which prevent crime and increases the perceived sense of security. The Swedish police and several public transport companies carry out investigations and develop action plans in order to increase the safety of women in public transport. Close cooperation means that the improvements then can be implemented in the right areas.
Sure. So my name is Anastasia Lukaitou-Sideris. I'm a professor of urban planning here at UCLA, and I'm also the Associate Dean for the Laskin School of Public Affairs. Along with a colleague, Professor Vania Sekato, who is at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, we are leading an international study that involves 18 cities in 5 different countries and looks into how college students are using transit, and particularly how much they may or may not be victimized from sexual harassment, from transit crime, how this affects their travel patterns. And we focus on this group because it is a group that is quite transit dependent. So we are asking these students from the different college campuses, basically around the world, a number of things. We really want to know how safe they feel waiting for the bus or waiting for the train or being on the bus or even walking to the train station and to the bus stop. During daytime, during nighttime, we are asking if they have had previous experiences of victimization. We are asking about different types of victimization, from serious crime to harassment. And we also want to know if they're taking precautions and if these experiences that they have affect their travel, how they use transit, or do not use transit if they take certain particular precautions. Our most significant finding, it's not a surprising one, it is that women all over the world are much more victimized by harassment. We look into non-verbal harassment, where people may expose themselves, and or people stalking women who are walking to the bus stop. And we also look into what we call physical harassment, which is aggravated assault, of course, rape, or even touching people, or even touching someone's hair, and crimes that have some sexual undertones. And we find that these forms are primarily verbal harassment is extremely prevalent. We find that women, it affects their travel to the extent that they even have avoidance behavior. They avoid getting on the bus or the train, either completely or during certain times of the night usually, or avoiding particular stops or particular lines. And in some cases, what we call risk management, they try to dress in a particular way, or they try not to wear jewelry or miniskirts. So we definitely see all over the world this impact of avoidance behavior as well as risk management behavior. And it is much more likely that women would say that they're taking these precautionary actions than men.
Hi, I'm Heather Allen, and I've been working in urban transport for more than 25 years. In the past 5 years, I've been focusing much more on gender and transport, and specifically on women's personal security and public transport. So in the past 3 years, I've led two rather large studies in different parts of the world, specifically on women's personal harassment and public transport. The first study was in 3 Latin American cities, which is Quito, Buenos Aires and Santiago, and this was supported by the FEAR Foundation and CAF, the Latin American Development Bank, who themselves are very interested in this issue. And we created 3 research teams, multidisciplinary research teams, that work together not only to co-create the methodology, but to also collect primary data from women and to look into how this issue is reported at a city level. Yes, the information that we gathered was particularly on women's reactions to their harassment, which happens on a daily basis, particularly in these Latin American cities. Now, over and above this, one of the most interesting aspects is that very few women actually report this. So a lot of the statistics that are gathered from these security agencies are really not painting the correct picture. So a lack of evidence does not mean that there is not harassment going on in this city.
Hi, my name's Jocelyn Crawford. I'm the Executive Director of Strategic Safety at the Department of Transport here in Victoria, in Melbourne. And we have a very good understanding as to what makes women and girls feel safe on our network. And we're always looking to make sure that we can increase the perceptions. There is trends, but as I said, it's quite ad hoc at the moment, the data set, and we are pulling that together so that we understand. We've got crimes data, coroners data, hospital data. There's a number of sources, so we're just trying to pull that together and get a very good understanding as to what the actual problems are.
7-10 years ago, we started a really robust campaign. We really want to focus on engagement of our riders and our employees, and as well as the police department. So we started different ad campaigns, awareness training for our frontline employees. So we really want our riders, whether man, woman, transgender, we want you to feel safe when you're using our bus and rail systems. So we started educating our employees, educating the police force, started a really robust community effort outreach type campaigns. So here at WMATA, we do a couple different things. We do surveys, with our riders, so we see what the riding public's feeling, how safe they feel in our system. We use a CompStat model of policing here, so we're looking at our crime trends all the time, and we monitor that crime trends. We take those online reporting tools, so some of our riders report harassment through an online portal tool, and they want to remain anonymous, but even that information is very helpful for us, so it helps us connect the dots. So we publish various reports that kind of capture that information. Again, so like if you look at our system, we have multiple color lines, and we start mounting those trends where those indecent exposures are happening, that public masturbation is happening. And then we try to correlate that, and then using our cameras, smart trip technology, and things of that nature, try to narrow those down. And then what we do is we catch a good still image of that individual, and we'll blast it out to employees or at certain stations. We'll put on Twitter, social media type campaigns to really identify these people, ask our riders for their help in identifying, and then make an arrest.
My name is Carla Gonzalez. I'm the manager for transport infrastructure at the World Bank, and I'm also leading the Gender Task Force, which brings the gender angle into transport operations.
My name is Carla Dominguez. I'm gender specialist in the Transport Global Practice at the World Bank. I'm mainly focusing in Africa and Latin America, and I'm part of the Gender Task Force, supporting the team in the operationalization of gender into our operations.
One of the most important ones is the lack of data. The world has not understood yet that infrastructure needs data that is disaggregated by men and women, since all the users are different. One of the things that we are trying to bring is the awareness at the client level to bring that data into account. So once you collect it, then you can go and make designs that are much more conducive to support all the transportation users.
Some of the main obstacles that we have identified in our operations are low reporting for part of the women users of public transportation, mainly because of lack of trust in these reporting mechanisms or in the institution, or the low capacity of institutions in charge of responding to sexual harassment. On the other hand, transport infrastructure has been designed in a way that is not taking into account women's personal security. We find a lot of stations of services that, for example, lack of lighting, of visibility, or of openness, or in the way they are planned. Sometimes we find stations that are in hotspots or areas that are dangerous for women.
Hi, my name is Shreya Kadepalli, and I lead the South Asia program at the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy. There's a growing trend of increasing reporting of cases of sexual harassment as well as violent crimes. In the past, that was not so, as not only were the reporting mechanism itself weak, but women and their families were rather averse to report cases out of a variety kind of fears. But now it's heartening to see that there's more reporting that's happening, so there's data that's available which can be used to make decisions. Having said that, the very same data is also, we've seen that some families of women tend to use it to restrict the mobility of women, citing unsafe conditions. So that's a bit of a problem.
My name's Sheila Watson. I'm Deputy Director of the FIA Foundation, which is a UK-based charity which focuses on supporting safe and sustainable mobility globally. We've done a great deal of work to ensure that policymakers and others in the field are made well aware of the issues that women face when we access different modes of transport. Our focus has been public transport. We want people to understand that although these modes are desirable because they are shared and they are minimising ideally the use of personal mobility such as cars, and that's particularly relevant in cities, they still have issues as they relate to women's personal experience of their security and safety whilst using them. So the work that we do is very much about collecting that data and then ensuring that that data is shared with the policymakers. The work that we've done not only exposed the issue, but also gathered a great deal of evidence from a range of cities in Latin America, cities like Quito, Buenos Aires, about what policymakers in those cities are doing to try and address these issues. And there are a whole range of really innovative ideas, from ensuring that bus stops are not opaque, places that people can hide, but rather more transparent, so women can feel very safe standing at them, right the way through to the use of IT to enable women using public transport to alert authorities, for example, should they feel that they're in danger or are being harassed.
Over my career, working in local, regional, state, and federal transport policy in the United States, I have had to repeatedly address safety, directly and indirectly. As the current executive director of a major regional transportation planning and investment agency, safety needs to be infused throughout both project design and policy development. From bike and pedestrian safety to grade crossings for rail projects weaving throughout our communities, to the conditions of our infrastructure in the wake of natural disasters. In all cases, the special needs of women and families as user or impacted party of the transport system must be deliberately and thoughtfully considered. We also must ensure, on a very human level, that we are providing an inclusive workplace that is free of harassment and discrimination so women can thrive in the transportation workforce.
Hello, I'm Rosalea K. Rivera from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. I'm a feminist and also a co-producer of a public service radio program. I'm based here in the Philippines, and I'd like to share that we have recently passed the Philippine Safe Spaces Act, or it's a law about respecting women in public spaces. And I think this is an important historical moment in our history, since we have been working on this for several years now. Talk about transport spaces, we're talking about the terminals where they wait for their transportation when they're traveling. And inside the jeepneys, the tricycles, the what they call here as UV Express, and the trains. So we have been having a lot of problems with this because we don't have any legal support for women to report. But now that we passed this law, when we say we, is that all the people who have worked towards the passage of this law are now looking for this, that they cannot be harassed while they're commuting to work. It's very difficult, especially in cities, how this happens. But now we are working on the implementing rules and regulations for this new law. We work closely with local government units here in Metro Manila. To give you a background, Metro Manila has 16 cities, and we work with 6. We were able to work with groups of women who work at night, with women, young girls who go to school, mothers who go to market, senior or elderly persons with disabilities, why they are not able to travel in their cities. So we were able to gather very specific information.
So my name is Kalpana Vishwanath, and I'm a sociologist, a social researcher who has worked on the issues of urban safety, urban mobility, and gender for the past nearly 15 years. I have worked with Jagori, with several UN organizations, Women in Cities International, on looking at how to build safer and more inclusive cities for women in different countries around the world. I am currently the co-founder and CEO of an organization, a social enterprise called SafetyPin, which is a technology platform and a set of apps used to build safer cities, to help women and others move around in cities without fear, to access opportunities and for education, for livelihood, and for entertainment. So SafetyPin is an app. Okay, it's called My SafetyPin. It's a free app which can be downloaded anywhere in the world, and women can put in information about how they feel in a place, as well as they can see all the information and use that to make safer decisions. So one of the things, and we have done several things around enabling women's mobility to be able to move around without fear and with confidence. And a couple of things that we've done is, in Delhi, we have looked at all the metro stations and done a last mile connectivity study, which is 500 meters around the metro stations, to get a sense of which areas are safer, how do we ensure that the built environment is safe for women when they exit a metro station and connect for that last mile or first mile back to their homes. So we've looked at infrastructure as well as how the space is used. In Bogota city, we did a project with the city government there where they actually use safety pin to map the bike tracks to find ways to enable more women to use it at night. And women also use it in several countries around the world to just see which areas are safer. We've also done a rating of bus stops, which bus stops are safer for women to use. So the idea is, we want safety, we want inclusion, and for that, mobility is key, because only if you can move around safely do you actually feel safe enough to move to access opportunities in a city. So we continue to work, crowdsource women's views, but also work with city governments and other stakeholders to design interventions, design public spaces, design public transport that is responsive to women's needs and girls' needs.
There is a majority of sexual harassment that goes on buses. Buses seem to be slightly worse than metros, and it could be to do with the fact that the security arrangements in a metro is slightly easier to organize. There's more CCTV cameras, and although that's changing on buses, we haven't found the direct causal link of putting CCTV cameras on a bus and a reduction in sexual harassment incidents. Quito, for example, has done a very interesting program on this with an easily to remember SMS number. And this adverts the bus driver or the bus conductor that an incident is going on actually on their bus. The victim is asked whether they want to have a police escort when they arrive at the next stop, which can sometimes be arranged even though it's quite short. And the numbers of incidents have more than quadrupled, which is very good because it does show that women then, when they are given an opportunity to easily report these incidents, that they do so. And more importantly, this has led to a number of prosecutions, and some of the prosecutions have been with underage girls, which I think we all can agree is a very emotionally frightening situation if you are a girl under 16 and you're molested on public transport. This is going to stay with you for a long time.
I think it's really crucial that we continue to refresh the body of individuals working in the field. Of course, we always need new people coming in, new ideas, and I think that's particularly the case because we are now increasingly relying on some of the new technologies to underpin some of our solutions to sustainable mobility. It's a bit of an issue for girls. They, generally speaking, find it harder to access this sector, which is very male dominated. But that's changing. There are a huge number of great women working in the sector, from the engineering side right the way through to the policy. And so there are lots of women there to show what can be done, and we would always encourage women to give transport a real consideration when they make their career choices.
So when we see women in sectors that are mainly male-oriented, we have to bear in mind that once you have a seat in the table, you earned that seat and you use it with passion and responsibility. And most of all, if you have something to say, do not shy away or even thinking that what you are saying is so different from the rest of the audience that it might not be interesting or important. It's quite the opposite, and that is why diversity matters so much.
As Carla is saying, once women have a seat at the table, they have certain responsibility. And this entails to enabling an environment for more women to be able to participate in the sector. For example, having a working space free of sexual harassment, linking with universities to make sure that there's a linkage between the demand and the supply so that really more women can come into the workplace.
Thanks go out to all the people and organizations that contributed to the video. I hope you are inspired to continue learning about this topic. Please look for the TRB special report on the conference. You will find summaries of several sessions and attendee discussions on improving security and safety for women in transport. As a user of the transportation system, an advocate, an employee in transportation sectors, or in the academic roles, please engage in your professional and social networks to help ensure women of all ages and abilities enjoy the freedom to travel safely and efficiently. If you are a student or young professional, find a mentor to help channel your talents and passion to advance women's issues in transportation. Safe travels always.